He who explains loses power. He who acts creates it.
The world is used to excuses. Every step must be explained, every decision justified, every feeling sorted into boxes. People spend their lives proving they are right, yet do nothing that truly changes their reality. They speak to wash their hands of responsibility. They persuade so they do not have to act. The more words there are, the less power remains. Machiavelli knew this. Power does not speak, power acts. The one who explains has already yielded. The moment you start explaining, you admit the other has the right to judge. You place yourself lower. The strong do not prove, they assert. They know a word without an act loses value. They know an excuse is not protection, it is voluntary surrender. Silent power is the art of inner clarity. It is when you do not need to be understood. You do not fight for interpretation. You create a fact. Machiavelli wrote that the most resilient leaders act without unnecessary explanations, because every word is an open door for doubt to enter. When a person talks too much, they show they are not sure. They try to convince not others, but themselves. Their speech becomes a spell meant to drown out their fear. A strong person does not need spells. Their silence is louder than any argument, because there is a decision inside that silence. Today's world is built on noise. Everyone talks, no one listens. Everyone demands a reaction, and those who do not respond become a threat. Silence scares the weak. When you refuse to explain, people fill the pause with their fantasies. They project their fears onto you. That is when you start to control perception, because power is not the force of persuasion. It is control over interpretation. Machiavelli taught, to rule is to steer perception. The best way to steer is to say nothing. Let people build their versions. Let them guess why you did what you did. Let them argue. Let them search for meaning. The moment they do it, they already rotate around your axis. You became the center even while you were silent. Explaining destroys the aura of power. When you explain, you make yourself transparent. You remove the mystique. You reveal the inner mechanics, and with that, you lose power. He is obliged to be effective. Effectiveness is not talk, it is result. The one who lives by explaining lives in fear of losing favor. They are afraid of rejection if they are not understood. But power demands the opposite. It begins where you are ready to be rejected, where you no longer fear being misread, where you accept that your silence is part of the strategy. Do not explain, act, because action cannot be refuted. Words can be disputed, intentions criticized, but a result cannot be denied. It exists. It speaks for itself. Every step, every decision, every victory without commentary builds an aura of undeniability. People do not believe in rightness. They believe in strength. Machiavelli understood something simple. The crowd forgives mistakes, but not weakness. A mistake made confidently looks like courage. Doubt expressed in words looks like defeat. That is why the strong always speak little. They do not share doubts. They act and then adjust the course. The crowd wastes years on debates, excuses, and hunting for the guilty. The world always splits into those who talk and those who do. The first seek understanding. The second create facts. The first need an audience. The second need a goal. The first spend energy on words, the second on steps. That is why some are forgotten and others become legend. Silent power shows in the ability not to answer. When you are hit with accusations, provocations, doubts, silence becomes a shield. Any response only strengthens their position. Any defense makes you vulnerable. But when you do not answer, they lose footing. They start doubting themselves. They see their words do not touch you. In that moment, you take control. Explaining is a concession. It admits that opinion matters to you. But power does not need approval. It stands on autonomy. The strong know that any explanation robs an act of weight, so they do not explain. They correct the space. People feel it in their bodies. They do not grasp it rationally, but they sense this. You cannot be manipulated around them. Action out of reach. Power is built on distance. Words are the bridge that destroys that distance. The strong say just enough to direct attention, then go quiet. Everything else is conjecture. Conjecture feeds power. Now I will open for you the inner architecture of quiet influence, the psychology of power without words, and the mechanism for using silence to steer how others perceive and behave. The strength of silence is not the absence of words, but the presence of control. When you refuse to explain, you are not hiding. You create tension. People feel a solution behind the quiet, but they cannot predict its form. That forces them to keep their distance. Power begins where others lose balance trying to decode you. Machiavelli understood this. Power is not just in actions, but in anticipation. The one who makes others wait already manages their attention. Do not explain. Act. Explanation drains the effect. The energy of intention scatters into words. People stop feeling your resolve when you try to make it easy to understand. The strong take a step and the world must adjust. The weak describe their plans and drown in their own promises. Every time you talk about plans, you weaken them. You let outside opinions enter the space of your will. Even if people nod, even if they support you, it is no longer yours. It becomes a collective version of your goal. Power demands autonomy. Machiavelli would say, do while others discuss. Win while others hold meetings. Silence makes a move unexpected. People are not ready, and that is why it lands harder. Explaining robs you of surprise. If you want power, do not warn. Act, so that the fact becomes the answer. Let them catch up. Silence is the strategy of economy. Every word is a coin of attention. The more you spend, the less you have. Those who talk a lot grow poor inside. Their words inflate and lose value. The one who speaks rarely creates a deficit around themselves. That deficit turns into respect. Machiavelli would call this the art of being unavailable. Not because you are closed, but because fear. That solitude makes you whole. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must be able to be alone because power is always distance. Distance breeds clarity. The less you explain, the more you see. When you stop getting pulled into endless dialogues, your mind stops defending itself. It begins to separate noise from essence. You start to feel where action is truly needed and where it is only a wish to prove your importance. Explaining is a form of dependence. The one who cannot act without approval remains a child. They wait for applause, fear condemnation. Power requires inner adulthood. You act not because you were allowed, but because it is necessary. This is the cold force. It does not seek the warmth of recognition. It creates order because it sees chaos. Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. In modern terms, this is not about fear in others' eyes, but calm in your own. Let others fear losing your respect. Let them feel it is expensive. When you stop explaining, people start listening to deeds. It always hurts. The world is used to words. It wants you to justify your existence. When you stop, you break the script. In that moment, you become real. Do not explain why you left, just leave. Do not explain why you changed, just change. Do not explain why you stopped tolerating, just stop. People will invent a version anyway. Let them live in their versions. Your life does not need subtitles. A strong person does not explain to the weak why they became strong. It cannot be explained. It can only be lived. Silent power does not shout about itself. It simply makes the world slowly accept it as normal. First they resist, then they argue, then they copy. This is the pattern. Machiavelli understood. A result is a form of persuasion that needs no words. Every day you can choose to talk or to do. The one who talks gets attention. The one who does gets power. Between try to feel it, justify it, make sense of it, the more they try, the deeper they sink into your rhythm. That is invisible control. Silence teaches economy of inner fire. You stop throwing sparks in every direction. Then one action becomes an explosion. Concentrated, precise, irreversible. If you feel this is about you, subscribe. Let more people understand that real power begins not with loud statements, but with the quiet in which action is born. When the world screams, silence becomes a weapon. It breaks the pattern. It forces a stop. In that moment, you're the only one who is calm. Calm is a form of power. Machiavelli wrote that chaos always defeats the one who loses their head in it. The cold person always finds a way to turn chaos into strategy. Silence is a mirror. It shows who can stay when words disappear. How many people remain when there's nothing to hear but your breath and your steps? The real ones stay. The rest dissolve. This cleansing is not a loss, it is a release. Do not explain, do. Let your action be the echo that speaks for you when words have lost their meaning. The world will always demand that you explain yourself. It cannot stand those who act without permission. The person who does not justify themselves breaks the structure of control. They cannot be predicted, held, or used. They become an anomaly in a system built on excuses and fear. That is why silence is the most dangerous weapon. When you refuse to explain, you leave others alone with their insecurity. They start looking for reasons, motives, hidden meanings. The more they search, the more they get lost. Machiavelli knew that power is not suppression but management of interpretation. Silence makes you a mirror. People see in you what they fear in themselves. You no longer try to be understood. You act. When the result appears, it no longer needs words. What you did becomes inevitability. People do not debate the laws of nature, they obey them. True strength reaches that level. Your actions are taken as the natural course of things. To reach it, you must give up the very idea of recognition. It is painful because each spark can become a fire. Your silence is a filter. Only the necessary gets through. This is not coldness as detachment. It is coldness as clarity. Feelings do not rule the decision. They serve it. A cold person is not heartless. They self-govern. They know emotions are a weapon, and do not hand it to the enemy. Machiavelli would say, better to be a stone than a mirror if you want to survive the storm. A stone does not reflect, it endures. The world is tired of constant explanation, of those who seek understanding instead of acting. The more such people there are, the sharper stands out the one who simply does. Their acts cut the quiet like a blade. It scares because there is no usual game. There is no plea for consent. There is a fact. Silent power does not need a stage. It acts in the shadows, yet its presence is felt in every shift of the room. People start choosing words more carefully around you, even if you said nothing. The quiet near you becomes a signal. You do not explain why you act this way, because you know any explanation will be used against you. People do not listen to understand. They listen to interpret. They pull pieces out, twist them, comment. In that cacophony, the essence disappears. The one who speaks less loses less. Step by step, your silence turns into armor. It protects from arguments, doubts, fuss. It leaves only action. Little by little, the world adapts to your frequency. People who need noise, leave. Those who can bear a pause, remain. With them, you can build. Machiavelli taught that the best way to preserve power is not to share it in words. People should feel the presence of strength, but not see its gears. Explaining breaks the secret. Secret holds attention. The less they know, the more they respect. You stop arguing. Debate is always a trap. In debate, you lose your balanced stance. You are dragged into emotion and power does not sell, meaning they embody it. That irritates because most people need justification for existing. They demand that you share their confusion. You just walk. No slogans, no manifestos. That is why you create a movement. Power is not the ability to manage others. It is the ability not to let them manage your inner state. If you stay calm when everything collapses, that is the summit. Silence signals that you see farther than the rest. When all around is panic, silence is a sign of confidence. People feel the contrast. They do not understand it, but they follow it. Machiavelli said the crowd always seeks the one who is not infected by its fear. If you stay calm, you become the center. With time, you realize that acting without explanations is trust in yourself. You stop needing arguments because you know inside you are doing the right thing, even if the world thinks otherwise. That is real maturity. Silence stops being a weapon and becomes your natural state. You no longer choose to be quiet. You simply do not need words. You act, and the action says everything. Machiavelli would say, power is not loudness. It is inevitability. People respect those whose decisions become reality, not a topic of talk. When your presence turns into direction, you no longer need to speak. If you have reached this state, where explaining feels redundant and action becomes your language, know this: you have crossed the line where games end. Real power begins here. If you recognize yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I am taking off the masks." Let those gather here who no longer seek approval and are ready to act rather than talk. This is only the beginning.